My name is Tom Green, and I'm 34 years old. I was married to my beautiful wife, Laura, for 7 years. She's 32, but she looks like she's barely 26. We never had children, though I was ready. Laura wasn't quite there yet, always saying, "Soon, Tom, soon." Our sex life was fantastic, but honestly, it was the little things I cherished most, VDJ, the kisses, the hugs, the feeling of being close to her. Holding her brought me a sense of peace and overwhelming love. She was always responsive, always there for me. I was happy. I truly believed she was happy too. That's where I went wrong, VDJ, trusting her completely. My love for Laura transformed into a blinding rage, then settled into a cold, empty void. They say the opposite of love is indifference, but that's not true for me. My love became a dull, bone-chilling hatred. It feels like my soul has died, and I don't think I'll ever recover. If Laura were on fire, I wouldn't lift a finger to help. I wouldn't even piss on her to put it out. You're probably wondering what could possibly turn a kind, loving man like me into this vengeful shell. It all started at last year's company holiday party. Laura always dressed a little too provocatively for these events. I didn't mind too much. I was flattered that the most desirable woman in the room was mine. Men paid her a lot of attention, and I secretly enjoyed it. This year she wore a dress that left very little to the imagination. I was married to a woman who looked like a walking fantasy. I couldn't help but wonder who she was trying to impress. I'm not usually a jealous guy, but what's mine is mine. As long as there was no doubt about that, we were fine. Before we left for the party, I told Laura that a lot of men would be hitting on her, and I trusted her not to let anything happen that would be disrespectful to herself or me. I'm not a man who tolerates disrespect. My martial arts partners call me the Crusher for a reason. They all know I can be a mean son of a bitch when pushed. Laura never saw that side of me, and I prayed she never would. I had a bad feeling before we left the house, a kind of premonition. "Why are you looking like your dog just died, Tom?" Laura asked, giving me her sexiest smile. That smile always had a powerful effect on me. "To tell you the truth, babe, I'd rather skip the party this year," I said, hoping she'd agree. "Why, honey? I thought you always had fun at these parties," she said, as she slipped on a pair of sheer black stockings. "Don't be such a party pooper. We don't get out dancing much. I really need to let my hair down and have some fun. I'm almost finished dressing. Come on, let's go." She sounded irritated by my hesitation. Something wasn't right. She was way too excited about that damn party. "It's just that last year the party got a little too wild for my taste," I said. "There was a lot of inappropriate touching going on. People start drinking and acting stupid. Crowds make me nervous, especially since Jim became vice president of the company." Jim was a notorious womanizer who had hit on every woman in the office. There were rumors he'd slept with several of them. I almost knocked him on his ass last year. I didn't like how he was always hovering around Laura, and I definitely didn't like how he danced with her. Jim was the president's nephew, a slimy piece of work who thought the world revolved around him. He was married with 2 kids, and I felt sorry for his wife. She deserved a better man than that punk. I'd often seen him flirt with numerous women in a way that humiliated her at previous parties. She'd refused to come with him for the past couple of years. She was a real lady, beautiful too. I couldn't imagine why she stayed with that pompous clown. He was just a big flirt. I could handle him. "Never forget that I'm proud to be your woman," she said. "I love you more than life. You know that, don't you? There's no need for you to be worried. Sure, he's tall, rich, and handsome, but he'll never be the man you are. You're my baby, and you always will be." I didn't like her description of the creep, but I shrugged it off. Laura had never given me a reason to doubt her loyalty. Love truly is blind. I could see my fate was sealed. There would be no changing her mind. Sometimes a man has to give an inch to gain a mile. I didn't want anything to interfere with my plan to make passionate love with her when we got home. We arrived at the party a little late. Some people were already a bit tipsy. The music filled the room and people were dancing, laughing, and having a good time. I decided to try to fit in and hope the evening would end sooner rather than later. As soon as we walked through the door, Jim Stevens came over and gave me a weak handshake. I felt like I'd touched a snake. He glared lasciviously at Laura, taking her hand and giving it a long kiss, completely ignoring my presence. My blood pressure spiked, and my head started pounding. It wouldn't have taken much to knock him out right there. I could see it was going to be a long night. Laura gave me a reassuring wink, as if to say we were secure, and we began to mingle with the guests. Jim walked over and took Laura by the arm. She didn't object. I didn't know how much more I could take. "Let me introduce you to some of our new staff," he said with a wolfish grin, acting as if Laura was his woman. "You don't mind, do you, Tom?" He didn't wait for my answer. Laura gave me her please relax look, so I let it pass. A good friend of mine named Eddie saw what was happening and dragged me over to a group of guys playing a drinking game and telling lies while their wives circulated and gossiped about whatever it is women talk about. I pretended to drink. I never get drunk. I like to keep my wits about me. While I was enjoying the company of my friends, I would occasionally look around for Laura. I noticed she danced with a couple of guys. Everything seemed above board. I wasn't sure how much time had passed. I knew I was ready to go home and ravish my wife. We hadn't made love for a couple of days, which was a long time for us. I was glad she had the opportunity to let her hair down, as she put it. I had done my duty. I couldn't find her and couldn't imagine where she could be. I looked everywhere. I saw her friend Pam and inquired if she had seen Laura. Pam looked a little nervous and told me she had seen Laura dancing with Jim about 20 minutes ago. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The uneasy feeling that had been haunting me turned my stomach into knots. I began to look for her outside the ballroom. I heard voices as I looked into an unused small conference room. I decided to check it out. I could hear a woman in the throes of passion. It sounded like Laura. I couldn't believe my eyes. There was my loving wife bent over the arm of a chair, being drilled by the slime ball himself. At first, I was paralyzed. I thought I was having a stroke. They were too involved in what they were doing to notice me standing there. I walked over and stood there for a while before they saw me. "Oh my God, Tom!" Laura shrieked, trying to pull herself together. "Let me explain." "You lying bitch," I said, spitting the words out with all the venom I could muster. "I worshipped the ground you walked on, and this is how you repay me? We're finished. You are no longer my wife. Look at me." She couldn't raise her head. I grabbed her by the hair and forced her to look at me. "What do you see? Do you see the eyes of the man that loved you? They're the eyes of a dead man. You killed my heart and soul tonight. Now I see why you were so eager to come to that damn party. You wouldn't have sex with me because you were saving your cheating pussy for this dirtbag." At that, she let out an agonizing cry. "No, I can explain," she pleaded. "Don't try to talk your way out of this. You've been busted." She was terrified. She tried to speak, but no words came out. All the time I was berating my soon-to-be ex-wife, Jim just stood there looking amused. At that moment, 3 of my buddies, Eddie, Paul, and Dave, entered the room. I guess Pam told them there was going to be trouble. They stood there frozen. Nobody knew what to say. I turned to Jim. "And you piece of shit. I should kill you where you stand. If you try anything, I'll have you arrested for assault, and my uncle will fire you. Maybe I'll just kick your ass for the hell of it." He grinned at me. "I've already had your precious wife's pussy several times. You've been getting sloppy seconds after every holiday party for the past 5 years. He was sneering at me. "Screw you and your uncle," I growled. I decided to not only humiliate him but make him suffer. And Laura, too. He was a few inches taller than me. Not that it mattered. I was ready for a fight. The prick had no idea what I was capable of. I allowed my anger to dull the pain as I looked at the woman I would have gladly given my life for. We both knew what she had done was unforgivable. There could be no excuses or forgiveness. Our life together was over. As badly as I wanted to kill him, she wasn't worth spending the next 25 years in prison. "Your ass is mine. You'll pay for your disrespect," I said, looking him in the eye. I wasn't reacting as he expected. I was blocking his exit deliberately. I could see the indecision on his face. He decided to bluff his way out and pushed me out of the way. That was a big mistake. I easily avoided his hand and gave him a quick shot to his gut. When he doubled over, I grabbed him around the neck and began slapping him with the palm of my hand. The first slap stunned him and twisted his head around as he hit the floor. I lost count of how many times I slapped the now defenseless, whimpering garbage on the floor. All right, please enough. No more, please, no more, he begged like the coward he was. Not nearly enough, scum sucker. You'll live to regret deciding to screw my wife. You took what was mine. When I'm finished, you'll be divorced and disgraced. I'm going to sue you for alienation of affection. Then I'm going to sue the company for your misconduct on company time. I'll be rich and you'll be screwed. You messed with the wrong man. Hear me good, the wrong man. If a man's voice can sound murderous, mine did. 2 police officers entered the room. I looked at Laura. I didn't forget about you. You gave up a good man and your marriage for this crying piece of shit. You deserve each other. He attacked me! Arrest him! Jim yelled at the cops. They understood what was happening. It was self-defense, officer, Eddie said. Tom caught him banging his wife. He tried to attack Tom. Is that right? One of the officers asked. The cop asked the other 2 men. Absolutely, officer, Paul said. Tom was defending himself, Dave added. They're lying. He assaulted me, Jim pleaded, close to hysterical. The cops looked at Laura. She appeared to be in shock. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Are you all right, ma'am? Did you see what happened? She just sat there crying with her hands over her face. I felt no pity for her. The love I had for her was compressed somewhere in the back of my mind. Do you want to press charges against this man? The sergeant asked, pointing at Jim. I could see their sympathies were with me, even though Jim was the one with the swollen face. He came after me. He's crazy, I tell you. I didn't do anything. That's not what 3 witnesses saw, the other officer said. Officer Locke, I'd be more than willing to press charges. Get him out of here, the sergeant said, looking at me with empathy. If there's anything I can do for you, let me know. Just call the station and ask for Sergeant Roberts. I've been there too. I nodded at him in silent recognition of his understanding. We'll talk to you later, Tom, Eddie said. Come on, guys, let's go. Tom has some business to take care of. Eddie walked over to me and looked into my soul. Then he hugged me. Hang tough, he said, and then left the room. Now there were only 2 people left. I picked up her panties off the chair and put them in my pocket. I had no idea what I was going to do with them. Laura had calmed down. It was easy to see she dreaded what was coming next. So did I. I felt an icy chill come over me. Something inside was broken. It was a numbing feeling that allowed me to feel detached from the woman I loved. I was a stranger to myself. I looked at Laura and thought of that old Cleach GC VDJ. She looked like she'd been ridden hard and put away wet. How does a man erase the woman he loves from his heart? I had no idea. I knew that I could never look at her the same way again. I had to keep my anger. It controlled my grief and protected what was left of my sanity. At that moment, I knew what my revenge would be. The wound she inflicted would stay with me until the day I die. She had destroyed my world. The trust was gone. Nothing mattered anymore. Get your coat and meet me at the car. Be quick, I said, turning my back on her and leaving the room. I didn't want her to see the pain I was feeling. I didn't want her sympathy. The funeral for our love and marriage was about to begin. As the car sped into the night, my silence said volumes. Are we going home, Tom? We don't have a home anymore, I said, my voice flat. When you broke our marriage vows, you destroyed our home. It's just a house now. A house where I used to be happy. A house where I loved and trusted a wife who used to be my best friend, I said, unable to disguise the sadness in my voice. She started to cry quietly. Tom, is there any way you could possibly forgive me? Please, I'll do anything. Give me a chance. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, she whispered. Do you think I'll ever forget what I saw tonight? Or that piece of shit telling me he screwed you? When you let that parasite have you, you screwed my enemy. You decided to dishonor your vows to me and give him what was mine again and again. When you did that, you ended our marriage. That means the last 5 years have been a complete lie. A total lie. Please forgive me, Tom. Believe it or not, I love you with all my heart. I guess I let him use me for the excitement of doing something I shouldn't do. I never thought about the consequences. It was like a game, a silly, immature game. He could never be the man you are. I know I was foolish and selfish. Let me make it up to you. Please, beat me, curse me, anything you want. Just don't leave me. I'll die without you in my life. It didn't mean anything. It meant everything, I yelled as my hands gripped the steering wheel. My emotions were taking control. I forced myself to calm down. A game screwing with my life was a game. You talk about your love. You love me, yet go and screw another. The car slowed and stopped. Get out. Where are we? Get out, I repeated, my tone leaving her no choice. Laura followed me to the door. Mrs. Parker, yes. Yes, how can I help you? My name is Tom Green. I used to work for your husband's company. May I speak with you for a moment? Is Jim okay? What's this about? I had a firm grip on Laura's arm as we entered the house. Please come in. Have a seat. She was the kind of wife I thought I had. I was going to cause her pain. Jim would hurt much worse. He should have read me better. I had to hurt his innocent wife in order to crush him and humiliate my soon-to-be ex-wife. I was being driven by primitive feelings I can't begin to explain. This will only take a short time, Mrs. Parker. My wife has something to tell you. All eyes were on Laura. Tell her, I said, tightening my grip on her arm. Two, she hesitated. Tell her. I tightened my grip again. My husband caught me having sex with Jim tonight at the holiday party, she blurted out like it was poison. Tell her how long you've been screwing her husband, I said. She cried. We only had her word on that. She could have had a series of lovers or a relationship with Jim more often than she's confessed. Who cares? Her ability to deceive long-term had already been established. Jim's wife looked more enraged than shocked. She always knew he was an asshole, but to be confronted with his adultery made her knees weak. She recovered and walked to Laura and slapped her hard. Laura fell back, holding her face, stunned and hurt. Get that bitch out of my house, she hissed. When I'm finished divorcing his worthless ass, you can have him, she said, looking at Laura like roadkill. It felt good knowing Jim was going to have one hell of a welcome home reception when he bailed out. I knew that Laura and I would soon part forever. It hurt me to look at her. I never could have imagined the day would come when my beloved wife would need my protection, and I would not give it to her. Well, shit happens. We were getting close to her sister's house. We will be divorced, I said without looking at her. The house will be sold, and I will take 70% of the equity. We'll divide our investments equally and keep our own pensions. If you don't contest the divorce, I will not use adultery against you, which would include the testimony of at least a dozen people who were aware of what you were doing over the past 5 years. I'm sure my 3 friends would be happy to drive a nail into your coffin. They were there when I kicked the shit out of Loverboy. I'm sure my 3 friends would be happy to drive a nail into your coffin. They were there when I kicked the shit out of Loverboy. There's nothing I can do, Tom. Nothing. She looked defeated, helpless, and desperate. The words hung heavy in the air, a venomous cocktail of accusation and pain. You already know the answer to that question, don't you? Her voice, laced with a chilling calm, sent shivers down my spine. My revenge against you will last a long time, maybe forever. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. She knew me too well, saw through the facade I'd so carefully constructed. What are you going to do to me? I asked, the question more a plea for understanding than a challenge. I know you, she continued, her voice softening slightly. You're basically a good woman whose lapse in character has cost both of us a terrible price. I believe that you love me, but it doesn't matter. For the most part, you've been a good wife whose selfishness has ruined several lives. You're also self-centered and manipulative. Her words were like shards of glass, piercing through the carefully constructed walls I'd built around my heart. I guess I chose not to deal with that part of you throughout our marriage, she said, her voice laced with a quiet accusation. I'll never make that mistake again. A cold dread settled in my stomach. Your guilt will haunt you, she promised, her eyes boring into mine. It will grow and consume you. When you finally realize that I'm never coming back, you'll experience deep depression and loss. You'll crave my forgiveness. Her words were a prophecy, a chilling glimpse into a future I desperately wanted to avoid. Having forfeited my love, she continued, her voice hardening once more, I want you to go to your grave, regretting what you've done to yourself and me, and carrying the burden of knowing that you are unforgiven. The car pulled up in front of her sister's house, a stark symbol of the chasm that now separated us. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer soon," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Don't go back to the house until noon tomorrow. By that time I'll be gone. I'll come back when you aren't there to get the rest of my stuff. That's it, Tom. Over 7 years of marriage gone just like that, just like that. Goodbye." As she exited the car, tears streamed down her face, a stark contrast to the icy resolve in her eyes. I watched her go, my own tears blurring my vision. The divorce with Laura was over in 6 months, a swift and brutal severing of the ties that had once bound us. 8 months later, I found myself haunted by the memory of that night, questioning if I should have let her see the pain etched on my face. Perhaps, I thought, it would have been a small measure of justice, a glimpse into the wreckage she had left behind. But I had lost control that night, consumed by a rage that felt both alien and terrifying. I didn't feel good about it, the memory of my own outburst a constant reminder of my vulnerability. Since then, I had tried to bury the grief, to keep the anguish at bay. But my subconscious mind wouldn't let me forget, relentlessly probing the wounds that refused to heal. For the first 6 months after our separation, she tried to reach out, her voice a haunting echo on my answering machine. Each message, each unanswered call was a small victory in my battle for self-preservation. Despite the anger, the hurt, I knew I still loved her. She knew how to get to me, how to unravel the carefully constructed defenses I had built around my heart. I couldn't let her in again, not if I wanted to survive. The less anger I felt, the more vulnerable I became. My love for her hadn't died, but it was a love tainted by betrayal, a love I couldn't afford to nurture. After the divorce was final, she stopped calling. What was there left to say? "I love you." A hollow lie. It was just sex, honey, an insult to my intelligence. I'm a sex addict? A pathetic attempt to shift the blame. Even if it was true, even if she had been drugged and coerced, her silence, her complicity was unforgivable. The image of her face alight with a pleasure she couldn't deny, was seared into my memory. She signed the papers, didn't show up at the final hearing. It was just as well. I didn't want to see her again, didn't need to see the pain in her eyes, the regret that might or might not be genuine. I used to think I understood her. After what I had witnessed, I realized how little I truly knew. "God," I pleaded silently, "help me." But even with his guidance, I could never trust her again. The chasm of doubt had grown too wide, swallowing any remnants of faith I had left. How could I ever know if she had truly loved me? Was she a master of deception, a wolf in sheep's clothing from the very beginning? Had I been a mere pawn in some elaborate game, a fool blinded by her carefully crafted illusion? The questions gnawed at me, a relentless chorus of doubt and despair. How could she make me a fool, reduce me to a caricature of a husband? If she loved me, how could she treat me with such callous disregard? The pain was a physical ache, a constant reminder of my shattered world. I felt inadequate, confused, adrift in a sea of uncertainty. Trust, once a cornerstone of my being, had crumbled into dust. I needed to do something, anything, to shake her from my life, to exorcise her ghost from my thoughts. But my so-called revenge was a hollow echo, a desperate fantasy fueled by a sliver of hope that she had loved me as deeply as I had loved her. What if she had been unfaithful from the start? What if I was merely a convenient placeholder, a temporary distraction while she pursued her true desires? The thought was unbearable, a dagger twisting in my gut. I didn't want to be the only one hurting. The reality was a bitter pill to swallow. I never truly knew her. I had been in love with a mirage, a carefully constructed facade. Could it all have been a lie, a tapestry of deceit woven with threads of manipulation and betrayal? The questions were a relentless torment, driving me to the brink of madness. The death of our marriage was sudden, brutal, a bolt from the blue. My life, as I knew it, was shattered in a single night. When the story of my actions that night became public, some friends saw me as a heartless villain, a man consumed by rage. Others felt I should have inflicted more pain, sought a more public and humiliating retribution. Their opinions were irrelevant. The fire of anger had subsided, leaving behind a hollow ache, a profound sense of loss. I was lost, adrift in a sea of uncertainty, with no desire to dwell on the past and no vision for the future. The hush money from the company president, a hefty sum of $600,000, was a bittersweet consolation. It came with the understanding that I would keep their names out of the public eye, protect their reputation at the expense of my own. He even offered me Jim's vice president position, a hollow gesture that only served to highlight the chasm that now separated me from my former life. I couldn't bear the thought of returning to that world, facing the pitying glances, the whispers, the judgment in their eyes. Some pitied me, others saw me as weak, a fool who had been blindsided by his wife's infidelity. With the $150,000 from Jim, a paltry sum considering the pain he had inflicted, I decided to take a break from the world. I didn't need to work, not for a while. The days blurred into a haze of alcohol and despair. I sought solace at the bottom of a bottle, drowning my sorrows in a sea of whiskey and regret. One night, as I sat nursing my third scotch, Frank, the bartender, a man who had seen it all, looked at me with concern. "Tom," he said, his voice gruff but kind, "I've never known you to be a heavy drinker. I'm worried about you, brother. You're working on your third scotch and you haven't been here 15 minutes. His words pierced through the fog of my despair. He was right. I was drowning, and the only life raft I could find was at the bottom of a bottle. I had brought Laura here many times, to this dimly lit bar with its familiar scent of stale beer and spilled whiskey. We had danced here, laughed here, shared dreams and whispered secrets. The last time we were here, we had danced as if tomorrow would never come. We had only danced with each other, our eyes locked in a silent promise of forever. Why had I seen the betrayal in her eyes that night? Maybe I didn't want to see it, chose to ignore the warning signs. We had gone home that night and made love, a passionate, desperate attempt to recapture the magic that had once bound us together. Now I scanned every woman who entered the bar, searching for a glimpse of Laura, dreading the possibility of seeing her again. I knew I would never dance again, not in this life, not with anyone else. The music, once a source of joy, now served as a painful. "I hope you don't mind me buddying into your business," Frank said, his voice gruff but kind. "But you look like a man who has a lot on his mind. It's slow tonight. I've been tending bar long enough to learn how to listen if you want to talk about it." His words were a lifeline, an invitation to release the torrent of emotions that had been bottled up inside me. I was happy to finally let it out. There had been too many conversations in my own head, too many sleepless nights wrestling with the demons of my past. Frank listened patiently as I poured out my story, the pain, the betrayal, the anger, the confusion. He said nothing for a long time, letting my words hang in the air, heavy with unspoken grief. "Your ex was in here a couple of weeks ago, Tom," he said finally, his voice low and thoughtful. "She was beautiful as usual, and she didn't look like she was grieving to me. She kept looking around the same as you've been doing. She could have been looking for you. She probably does love you in her own messed up way. Don't even try to make sense of it." He paused, letting his words sink in. "She came in with an older guy who acted and spoke as if he was some kind of royalty. You could see he had some money and was used to getting his way. She didn't look happy, then again she didn't look unhappy either." A new image of my ex flashed in my mind. I could see her, smell her perfume, hear her laugh. It was far away from the sobbing wretch I had left, but the sexy, manipulating force of nature she was. "Well, so much for my revenge," I muttered, the bitterness clinging to my words. I wondered if she had felt any of the torment and loss that had plagued me since the night we parted. I said nothing as I hung my head, lost in my thoughts. The grief that I had been trying to repress rushed over me, a tidal wave of sorrow and regret. I was powerless to stop it. I was glad Frank was there. I felt an overwhelming sense of mourning for what was dead and gone. "Now, what I'm about to say may sound a bit hard," Frank said, his voice firm but compassionate. "But you've got to suck it up, Tom. Your situation has changed and you have to change with it. That's all you need to know. Grow up, Get your body back in shape. Move on your feet, soldier. March or die. The answers to your problems are not in a bottle. You're stuck. And if you don't watch out, you could be there forever hiding in a bottle. You're close to losing respect for yourself. If you let that happen, you have only yourself to blame. His words were a wake-up call, a jolt to my system. The first thing you need to do is go get laid, he continued, his voice softening slightly. Then go get laid again. You're too good a man to let the bitch get you down. Find yourself a real nasty woman. Then screw her until you pass out. Clear your head and get on with your life. Frank sounded like a combination of friend, counselor, and a little touch of drill sergeant. My weakness was embarrassing. I followed Frank's advice. I stopped drinking, started working out, and screwed every female that would consent. It wasn't love, and I couldn't remember most of their names. The recreational sex helped me reacquire my self-esteem. We didn't make love, we screwed. They became the life preservers that kept me from drowning. But I needed more than that. I needed to feel loved. As I felt better and my confidence grew, the more female attention I seemed to attract. It came to me that I was not the cause of Laura's behavior. If anything, I should have addressed her self-centered, manipulating ways a long time ago. Whatever demons drove her were not of my making. When I realized that, my depression began to lift. I needed to get out of town, away from her. I didn't need to see or hear anything that reminded me of her. I bought a motorcycle, sold or gave away my possessions, and headed south. I hit the road with no map or destination. It didn't matter what road I was on. They all went somewhere. Sitting on the bike, I was free. It had been a few years since I had ridden. The wind in my hair, the open road stretching before me. It was a feeling of liberation, a chance to leave the past behind. Before I left the state, I was one with the bike and the road. I was no longer a white-collar drone or a drunk. I felt like a modern-day cowboy. The bike was my horse, beautiful, powerful, yet fragile, and it would kill you if the rider didn't stay in control. I was a biker, and the road in front of me was more important than what was behind. I was in control of my life. The bike did as I instructed it to do. My safety was my responsibility. These thoughts became integrated into my life philosophy. As I rode, I could smell the rhythms of life around me, feel slight temperature variations as the hills and valleys rose and fell while the scenery blurred by. It was good to be alive. I found myself thinking that I hoped there were motorcycles in heaven. Dying wouldn't be so bad. I was in the moment. What happened yesterday or what would happen tomorrow were no longer an issue. Every mile brought me closer and closer to a feeling of peace. The blast of wind and the roar of the big V-twin engine became music to my soul. I rode through many little towns with funny names, met some interesting real people, and ate a lot of greasy food. Some of the roads were good, some were bad. That's life, I guess. Then I turned west. Just outside of Silverton, Texas, I passed a woman desperately trying to get me to stop. I waited for her on the side of the road until she caught up to me. I couldn't imagine why she was alone in the middle of nowhere. She was average height, blonde, and very pretty. The woman was crying and looked like somebody had been smacking her around. "Please, please help me," she said in tears. Even in her disarray, she was good-looking. Her green eyes drew me in like pools of warm water. "Sure, how can I help you?" I asked, turning off the bike, not sure of what I was getting myself into. "I need to ride to Amarillo. My ex-boyfriend is on his way to my house. He said he's going to kill my mother and my daughter." "Do you have a cell phone?" she asked frantically. I wanted to ask her what the hell was going on, but her desperate state of urgency didn't allow for questions. There would be time later to get to the bottom of it. I gave her my phone, and she called the police. She seemed a little less stressed after she spoke to them. "You don't know me, and you've been more than kind, but could I ask you to give me a ride to my house? I'll show you where to go. I pray to God that maniac doesn't get there before the police. Please hurry." Before I could answer, she was on the back of the bike, holding me tight. We sped up the road. I used all of my skills to get her to her child and mother. I think I broke every traffic law on the books. It felt good to have her arms around me. It felt good to be needed. I didn't even know her name. I wasn't sure what was going to happen when we arrived. If this guy had a gun, we'd both be screwed. When we arrived at her house, the police were already there. They were putting the handcuffs on a man who was resisting arrest. Don jumped off the bike and ran toward the house. He saw her and started shouting, "I'll get you, you'll see! They can't keep me locked up forever!" I wasn't sure what was going to happen when we arrived. If this guy had a gun, we'd both be screwed. When we arrived at her house, the police were already there. They were putting the handcuffs on a man who was resisting arrest. Dawn jumped off the bike and ran toward the house. He saw her and started shouting, "I'll get you! You'll see! They can't keep me locked up forever!" "Mama, are you and Rachel okay? I was so worried," she said, hugging her mother. Just then, a cute little 8-year-old girl appeared. "Mommy, you're home. Jack was here. He said he was going to kill us. Why does he want to hurt me and Grandma? Why Mommy?" I stood behind her, feeling a bit awkward at that moment. The moment was broken as both Dawn's mother and grandmother noticed my presence. "Please forgive me," Dawn said, her cheeks flushing. "I don't even know your name." "Tom Green," I replied, extending my hand. "This is my mother, June. And this," she said, her arm encircling the little girl, "is my little angel, Rachel." "My name is Dawn," she added, turning to her mother. "Mama, Mr. Green was kind enough to take me here after Jack slapped me and left me stranded on the side of the road. I was so scared. He's crazy. When I told him I didn't want anything to do with him anymore, I thought he was going to kill me." "It's very nice to meet you both," I said, offering a warm smile to the women. "And especially you, Rachel," I added, crouching down to her level. "I'm glad I could be of help." "Please call me Tom," I said, returning to my feet. "Mr. Green is my father's name." A slight smile touched my lips. "I'm sorry it couldn't be under better circumstances. I'm glad they caught that guy before he hurt anyone. He acted like a real loose cannon." Before Dawn could respond, Rachel piped up, her eyes wide with excitement. "Could you take me for a ride on your motorcycle, please? I love motorcycles." She looked at her mother expectantly, her earlier fear completely forgotten. "We'll see, Rachel," Dawn said cautiously. "If it's all right with your mommy, it's all right with me." June extended her hand. "We thank you, Tom," she said as we shook hands. Tom, would you like to stay for dinner? I guess we owe you some kind of explanation in exchange for your kindness." "I'd love to stay for dinner, June," I replied. "It's been a long time since I've had a home-cooked meal." "Well, I hope you're hungry," June said with a twinkle in her eye. "Mama always cooks too much." Rachel, ever the inquisitive one, piped up again. "Are you married?" No, I'm not," I chuckled. "Why do you want to marry me?" I asked, kneeling down to meet her gaze. "I'm too little," she said thoughtfully. "But you could marry Mommy." We all shared a laugh at her innocent suggestion, a touch of embarrassment coloring our cheeks. "Rachel, we just met Tom," Dawn said gently, her voice laced with the understanding only a mother could possess. "He doesn't even know us." "I know," Rachel insisted, "but he has a motorcycle, and I like him." "Well, now that we have that straightened out," June said with a smile, "let's eat." Despite having just met these people, I felt an unexpected sense of belonging. Their sincerity and warmth, coupled with the troubles they had faced, had awakened a protective instinct within me. There was a genuine goodness radiating from this family, and I found myself wanting to know more. I was particularly concerned about Jack. He seemed dangerously unstable, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Dawn and Rachel were still in danger. It didn't hurt that Dawn was undeniably beautiful, and little Rachel was utterly charming. I resolved that as long as I was around, no harm would come to them. Suddenly, my life had a purpose. The question that lingered in my mind was how such a kind woman could have ended up with a man like Jack. Then again, hadn't I made my own share of mistakes? One bad decision could have a ripple effect, leading to unforeseen consequences. Perhaps fate, for all its cruelty, could also be kind. I considered myself fortunate to have crossed paths with Dawn. Life had dealt her a difficult hand, and I knew that feeling all too well. When the time was right, I would delve deeper into Jack's past. He was trouble, and I intended to make sure he wouldn't hurt Dawn or Rachel. Dinner was a feast, and both Dawn and her mother seemed genuinely pleased that I had an appetite. The food was delicious, and I ate with the gusto of a man savoring every bite. I shared a bit about my divorce and my aimless travels over the past few months, trying to piece my life back together. They listened attentively, nodding and understanding. I liked them, and I sensed they felt the same about me. Both Dawn and her mother kept stealing glances at me, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and appraisal. They were sizing me up, trying to decipher the man beneath the surface. Little Rachel, however, had already made up her mind. She sat beside me, her small hand occasionally reaching out to touch mine, a gesture that warmed me from the inside out. "Tell me how you got mixed up with Jack," I said, turning to Dawn. "I don't like Jack," Rachel piped up, her voice laced with childish certainty. "He's a mean man, and he hit Mommy." Dawn's face crumpled with a mixture of pain and embarrassment as she realized the extent to which her relationship with Jack had affected her daughter. "At first he was considerate and kind," she began, her voice soft. "I didn't love him, but he was decent company in the beginning. I knew he wasn't good for me, but I was lonely and needed someone to talk to. Then he quickly changed and started drinking heavily. He didn't want me to talk to my friends or family, and then he started treating Rachel like unwanted baggage. I wouldn't put up with his abuse. When I told him it was over, he became violent. He said if I would speak with him one last time, he would leave us alone. That's how I ended up standing on the side of the road. Thank God you came along when you did." "Is he Rachel's father?" I asked, hoping against hope that he wasn't. "No," Dawn replied, her voice tinged with sadness. "My husband Brian is Rachel's father. He was killed in Iraq. We've been alone since then. It's been more than 3 years now. I've only known Jack for a month. That's it. That's how we got into this mess." "I suggest that you go down to the courthouse on Monday and get an order of protection," I advised. "He threatened you in front of the police. The order will be automatic. That way, he'll be arrested immediately if he comes anywhere near you or your family." "I want to ride the motorcycle," Rachel interjected, her enthusiasm lightening the somber mood. Okay, Dawn chuckled. "I'm sure Tom will give you a ride." "If you're finished eating, go watch cartoons," she added, turning to Rachel. "Okay, honey, come on, sugar, let's go see what's on," June said, ushering Rachel away. "Okay, Mommy. See you later, Tom," Rachel called out as she skipped away. "Wow, your daughter really gets to me," I said, turning back to Dawn. "She is something else." "She is my angel," Dawn replied, her eyes filled with love. "If anything happened to her, I would surely die too. I don't think I could have made it through the past couple of years without her." I reached out and took her hands in mine, a gesture that felt both natural and electric. A jolt of energy seemed to surge through me, traveling up my arm and straight to my heart. I wanted this woman. All I could see were her eyes, deep pools of vulnerability and strength. I was lost in them, and I knew she felt it too. Something powerful was transpiring between us, something that both excited and frightened me. "It's getting late," I said, standing up, feeling a sudden wave of nervousness. "I should go and find myself someplace to sleep tonight." My life was changing again, and I was struggling to keep up. "We have lots of room, Tom. Stay here, please," Dawn said, her voice soft but insistent. "Rachel would love it." "Really?" I asked, knowing what the answer would be. "Yes," she replied, her smile lighting up her face. "I would love it too. I feel so safe around you. You're my knight in shining armor. You rode in and saved me on your motorcycle. We'd be happy to help you until you get on your feet." Her smile was radiant, and I knew it wasn't my money she was after. "I accept," I said, returning her smile. "I noticed your house could use a few repairs. I'd be happy to do that for you, okay?" "That would be great, Tom," she said. "It will be nice to have you around for a while." "It's Friday night," I said, feeling a surge of boldness. "Do you know a place we could go dancing? Not too fancy." "I'm afraid I'm not carrying much in the way of clothes," I admitted. "Yep, I know just the place," she said, her voice brimming with genuine enthusiasm. "Let me see." She began appraising my measurements with a practiced eye. My husband Brian was about your size. I never got around to throwing away his things. I'll show you where I keep them. Please, if you see anything that fits, help yourself. I have to go get myself ready. Come on, I'll show you where the stuff is. It's in the guest bedroom. There's a bathroom in there if you want to take a shower. It's a country bar, she explained, so don't get too dressed up. She disappeared and reappeared an hour later, leaving me speechless. Holy smokes, I breathed, taking in her transformation. Dawn had cleaned up remarkably well. She was wearing jeans, high-heeled shoes, and a top that clung to her breasts, accentuating their natural beauty. Pearls adorned her neck, and her hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She took my breath away. She looked young, yet sensual, mature, and undeniably alluring all at once. You're positively stunning, I managed, a dopey grin plastered on my face. My expression spoke volumes about my feelings. I'm just a little old country girl, she replied coyly. If that's the case, I said, my voice husky with desire, I love the country. The thought of making love to her right there and then crossed my mind. She beamed at the compliment. I had a feeling I had struck gold. I wondered how she would handle the inevitable wave of masculine attention she was bound to receive. The last time I'd gone out with a beautiful woman, well, let's just say things hadn't ended well. Thank you, kind sir, she said, her eyes twinkling. You're looking quite handsome yourself. I think we make a very cute couple. Shall we go? There was a hint of nervousness in her voice as she walked out the door. I couldn't help but steal a glance at her shapely hips as she moved. My attraction to her was growing stronger by the second. I couldn't find a single thing about her that I didn't like. It was too early to say I was in love, but I was definitely lusting after her, and in a big way. The club was bigger than I'd expected. Heads turned as we entered, following Dawn's every move. She acted as if she was completely oblivious to the attention she was receiving. The band had the crowd dancing, nodding their heads to the music, their faces lit up with smiles and laughter. Dawn patiently showed me how to two-step and some other country and western dances. I was having a blast, and discovered that I actually enjoyed country music quite a bit. Whenever the music slowed down, I seized the opportunity to pull her close. I had a feeling this woman was meant to be with me. I needed her to feel the same way. We sat down to rest and have a beer, and she politely declined any offers to dance from other men. I learned that she had a degree from the University of Texas and was a teacher. Her deceased husband had been a captain in the Army, killed in action. She didn't think she could ever love again after his death. I understood that feeling all too well, having gone through the same thing after the end of my marriage. Dawn excused herself to go to the ladies' room. I watched her navigate through the crowd, several men trying to buy her a drink or at least strike up a conversation. They all failed. She didn't even crack a smile at them. I liked what I saw. Thanks for flagging me down today, I said when she returned. Meeting you is the best thing that's happened to me in a long time. I know you just met me, I continued, but I'm thinking that us being together feels right. It's like our spirits already know each other. I feel that way too, Tom, she replied softly. But there is something you've got to know about me. Any man in my life would have to accept two things. First, Rachel is my life. We're a package deal, and the love I have for Brian is still there. It always will be, even though he's gone. A man in my life would have to share me with his memory, she said softly. Are you man enough to deal with that? I looked down for a moment, gathering my thoughts. Then, lifting my eyes to hers, I took her hands in mine. Absolutely, I answered without hesitation. The thought of being away from her was unbearable. I've always wanted to be with a woman who could love like that. I respect what you're saying. I know he was a good man. I just hope there's room in your heart to love again. If I was him, that's what I'd want, I said sincerely. I could, Tom, she replied, her voice filled with a fragile hope. The love I still hold for my deceased husband is special, and in a special place in my heart. I have a big heart. I'm sure there is room for more love in there. She was looking at me with a mixture of hope and uncertainty, trying to gauge my sincerity, to assure herself that I understood, and was willing to stand by her and Rachel. When we got back to her house, I turned to face her at the door, looking deeply into her eyes. "Can I have a hug?" I asked, reaching out my arms. I embraced her tightly, holding on as if I never wanted to let go. Then I gently kissed her again and again. Her scent was intoxicating, driving me crazy. I never wanted the moment to end. Taking her face in my hands, I said, "You're very special. I just want you to know that." We kissed again, this time deeply and passionately. That night, sleep eluded me. As I lay in bed, my thoughts were consumed by Dawn and the events of the day. I knew I wasn't homeless anymore. With Dawn was where I wanted to be. She entered the room, closed the door softly, and slipped into bed beside me, cuddling close. I started to speak, but she pressed her finger to my lips, silencing me. I couldn't control myself. I started to kiss her neck, my passion urging me to claim her as my own. I resisted the urge as long as I could, wanting the night to be one she would never forget. We made slow, passionate love, our souls intertwining. 9 weeks passed. Jack's trial for assault and resisting arrest was looming. If he managed to make bail, he'd be back. Dawn didn't talk much about her fear of him, but I knew it was there, a shadow lurking beneath the surface. We slept together and made love every night. Her kind and gentle nature brought out the best in me, the part I liked. Our needs complemented each other perfectly. She needed a provider, a lover, and a protector. I needed someone to protect, a lover, and someone worth providing for. My life with Laura became a distant dream, fading further with each passing day. I was able to think of her without emotion. In fact, I was able to wish her well, hoping she would find her own path to happiness. Dawn would slip out early in the morning so she wouldn't set a bad example for Rachel. "So, when are you going to ask her?" June asked me one morning as I was drinking my coffee. "What?" I said, spilling a little coffee in surprise. "If I ever saw two people who should be together, it's you and Dawn, and Rachel adores you," June said, turning to face me as she washed the dishes. "You know she loves you, don't you? I never thought I'd see her so happy again," she added. "I know. I love her too, and Rachel and you too. I feel at home here," I said, walking over to give her a big hug. "We haven't known each other that long. I just don't want to rush things. I guess I should tell her I love her, huh? What do you think?" "I don't want to meddle," she said, patting me on the shoulder before leaving the kitchen, leaving me to my thoughts. That night, as I waited for Dawn in my room, I decided that I would talk to her about marriage. I knew she was the right woman. It was important that Dawn understood what our commitment meant to me. We needed to make some sacred promises to each other before we made any vows in public. I decided I would no longer hold back things that needed to be said, as I had in my first marriage. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the silence. It was Dawn. I instantly knew Jack was in the house. I reached into the drawer by my bed and grabbed the 9mm Glock I had purchased as soon as I met the residency requirements. I wasn't going to face a gunfight unarmed. I rushed to Dawn's room in my underwear. When I got there, I saw Jack on top of her, trying to assault her. She fought back, calling my name. I placed the pistol behind his ear. "Get up, asshole, real slow. If you flinch, you're dead. I'd love to blow your head off. In fact, I just might anyway." When he was on his feet, his pants fell to the floor. He tried to pull them back up. "Leave them there. If you move again, I'll kill you." "Dawn, call the police. Tell them that Jack has entered your house and tried to assault you. Keep Rachel and June in their rooms. Come with me," I ordered Jack. He shuffled along to the front door, his pants hindering his movement. When we reached the door, I told him to get on his knees. "Are you ready to die, Jack? You picked the wrong family and the wrong man to mess with. You're going to pay for attacking Dawn and threatening her family." "Who are you?" he croaked. "I'm a knight in shining armor, Jack," I said quietly. I cocked the gun and pressed it painfully deeper behind his ear, tightening my grip on his collar. "Say your prayers, maggot. You're about to find out what God looks like." After a long moment, he heard the hammer come down, and he pissed on himself. I had taken the magazine out. There was no bullet in the chamber. If you ever think about coming anywhere near Dawn or her family, the gun will be loaded next time, I warned. The police arrived and took him away. As a repeat offender, he would get at least 10 years with a guy named Bubba as a roommate. I don't think he ever wants to see me again. After the police left, there I was, standing by the door in my boxers with a gun in my hand. Dawn, Rachel, and June came rushing toward me. Rachel grabbed my legs, and Dawn and June were both hugging me. They were all talking at the same time. "Okay, ladies, he's gone and he's not coming back. We're safe. I promise we'll always be safe." Dawn and I were married 3 months later. Our son Brian was born 12 months after that. He looks just like me. Rachel was overjoyed to have a baby brother. I asked Frank to be his godfather, and he was honored to do it. He's become part of our family. Dawn is teaching, and June babysits. We bought a new house, and I opened a McDonald's franchise. I adopted Rachel, and she rides with me all the time. The girl has motorcycles in her blood. I learned that when life sends you down some bad roads, the only solution is to find a new road. I'm happy. Thanks for watching. What would you do if you found out your spouse was cheating on you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this.